Ruthie. Welcome to my channel. If you're new here, virtual hug. Make sure you hit subscribe and ring the notification bell and you'll get a little notification whenever I make a new video, which I haven't committed to how often that's going to be because I don't want to force content out of me. Hopefully every week. We shall see. So, 2020. What was that? Seriously, what just happened? I just can't believe that I'm already writing down 2021 on my schedule. It feels like it lasted forever, but it also feels like it was really fast. In this video, I'm going to share some things that I've learned in 2020. I obviously cannot share all of it because I've learned so much, but I will share the main things that I've learned during 2020. If you watch my past videos, you know how my year started. But if not, I'm going to give you a quick recap. So I grew up in Massachusetts on the Rhode Island border, and the second I graduated high school, I moved to New York. So I was living in New York, kind of going back and forth during my first surgeries from 2014 to 2019. And then all of 2019, I decided to move back home to save some money and just kind of figure out what I want to do without having the stress of paying rent in New York. But I quickly got kind of bored of being home again. So for 2020, my plan was to go to Costa Rica for February, move back to Brooklyn right when I got back in March. So that's what I did. February 2020, I spent the whole month in Costa Rica. I was an assistant teacher on my first yoga teacher training, and it was such a great experience. There was a lot of health problems that happened for me there. Nothing too serious, but it would kind of put a damper on the trip. But yeah, just being in another country, traveling the month before all the traveling got shut down was pretty solid. It was probably the best possible time to go. I'm so grateful I didn't choose to go in March because I would have been stuck there. And yeah, if you have any health issues, it's a little scary going to other countries, not being super confident of what the healthcare is like, especially when you don't have a colon and a lot of people don't even know that that's a thing. So I was pretty scared when I got sick, but I survived. I'm here. As soon as I got back from Costa Rica, I moved in with my boyfriend in Brooklyn. I was there for 10 days before I had a very unexpected emergency surgery that saved my life. And this was on March 10th. They released me from the hospital on March 13th. COVID shut down, the city shut down on March 13th. And the whole thing was just so crazy. So I decided to go back to Massachusetts for about 2 months during that first quarantine period because I was also recovering from surgery and it was just overall really low and just needed my parents around me. So I stayed back in Massachusetts for 2 months and then went back to Brooklyn, was doing my things, was having a good time, was feeling good. And then in September, another life-threatening thing happened, emergency surgery again. This time it was a lot more intense. I got a nice big scar down the center of my belly. That happened on September 5th, almost exactly 6 months after the surgery in March. So that was a doozy. So after that surgery in September, I really just was so over everything about 2020, clearly. Because on top of everything else that's been going on, I don't even need to explain what's been going on as a collective, crazy shit. But also in my personal life, I've been in recovery from surgery most of this year, which I really was not expecting, at all. That was my 6th surgery that I've had. This is why I think a lot of people are hesitant about getting a J pouch, is because of stories like this. Valid, I would be hesitant too. I was hesitant too. But here I am. So if you want to hear more about those surgeries and that experience, you can go check out those past videos where I talked a lot more about it. I'll link them below. That's all I'm going to say about it for now. In this video, I'm going to focus on what I've learned from everything. I've learned so much this year. So much about us as a society, so much about me as an individual, so much about the way that people communicate with each other, the way that our structured society is built. And I had an idea of this before, but I hadn't really dug into the extent of it until the pandemic, I think a lot of people. And it's just been a crazy mindfuck. Like, I've had hunches that everything we've been taught was a lie, and I've known that things are fucked up, but I haven't known the actual facts and the actual history of what's been going on. I hadn't studied that yet. And this year I really took the time to understand the way that our country was built and the extreme pain and trauma that this country holds, and just how heartbreaking it is to realize that everything that we've been taught for the most part was a lie. Not only does racism still exist, racism is in everything. It's everywhere. It's what our country was built on. And the most positive thing I can take away from that is the fact that I'm understanding it. I know many other people are now understanding this. And the first step in any change is noticing that something needs to be changed. And I think that's what we're doing right now as a country and as a world community, since we're all so connected now. I really do believe that we're going to look back and 2020 will be the best year. It's going to be the starting point for the future world that we're all going to live in and be a part of. And there's no way we're in the clear of the pain, there's going to be so much more pain that happens, but change is painful. If you think about the process, a caterpillar to a butterfly, that is a messy, painful process. That is what we are going through as a society. I really do feel incredibly hopeful about our future, especially with if you've heard about the astrology transits that's been happening. I do study astrology, Hellenistic ancient astrology. I will link my teacher's profile down below, Nightlight Astrology, Achyuta Bhavadas, and he is amazing. He explains astrology in a way that doesn't turn me off. It doesn't sound too out there. It sounds like an actual subject, because astrology really is one of the most ancient sciences. The way that he describes it is the stars are an ancient map of karmas playing out. So it's not like when Mars is here, then that's making you do this. It's when Mars is there and in that aspect to Mercury or whatever, then that signifies these karmas may be playing out in your personal lives, in society, in all these different things. So once I heard that, it really sparked my interest a lot more in astrology. The astrological events that just happened was the Saturn-Jupiter conjunction and winter solstice, and we moved into the age of Aquarius, which means that we're moving into an air sign and ether and air. Yeah. So that just signifies that so many things are going to be changing, and the way that society is right now is just the beginning. In the future, I think Zoom will be looked at as those giant cell phones. We're very much at the beginning of this big change and this big shift throughout the whole planet. And I have so much hope for what it's going to bring. So that's all I'm going to say about astrology right now, because I just don't know enough to give you that information. But check out my teacher's profile. He does such amazing videos and explains things so clearly. And it can sound like another language if you haven't listened to it before. You have to be very patient with astrology and accept the fact that you don't understand it for the beginning, and then eventually things will start to come together and make sense. If you're interested, can't recommend him anymore. So let's get back to what I've learned in 2020. So many things. I don't think I've fully learned any of these things I'm about to say, but all of these things have resonated with me extra hard this year. The first one is it's always best to feel your emotions. And this is something that has been really difficult for me to do, especially when you're feeling such intense, painful emotions. It's really difficult to feel them. And it's really easy to numb out and to just scroll on your phone, to watch TV, to get fucked up. It's very easy to do those things and ignore the emotions that you're feeling. And sometimes you do need to distract yourself from heavier emotions for some amount of time. But it's always best to feel them. You have to feel them eventually, or else they will be guiding your subconscious without you really knowing it. And you'll find yourself overreacting to things that don't really require that big of a reaction. and you're like, oh, where did that come from? It's like, oh, it's because I still haven't dealt with that thing that's just in the back of my mind at all times. And the only way to get those things off your mind is to release them. You have to release them through emotions, through art, through whatever, really, through sports, through running, through physical activity, singing. The list goes on. You just have to feel your emotions and you have to release them in some way. Number 1. Number 2, it's always best to speak your truth when you know what that truth is. I'm going to say that last part again. When you know what your truth is. I've always been someone who are like, I talk a lot. I mean, clearly you've seen the length of these videos, and that's cut down a lot from what's actually recorded. I talk a lot, and I've always kind of operated like the more I say, the better. The more information I give someone, then the better off everyone will be. The more honest I am, the more truthful I'm being. But what I've learned this year is that there is such a thing as oversharing, and there is such thing as sharing too soon. So the reason I'm highlighting that when you know what your truth is because a lot of times I find myself caught up in my emotions and deciding that I've come to some conclusion and this is how I feel. And it happens really fast and it feels like kind of impulsive. And I'm like, okay, this is the truth. Now I have to share it with someone or with everyone. But if I sit on that a little bit longer, I'll find that that's not how I really feel. That's how a part of me feels. But if I thought through it for longer and I dug a little bit deeper to see all the different sides of a situation and see how I really feel, I will be regretful if I shared too soon, or I'll be really happy that I didn't share that yet. A simple and very relevant example of that is when the Black Lives Matter movement started. And everyone was rushing to share their part of it, to share what their truth is, what their take on everything is, to prove that they're not racist, they're not part of the problem. And I definitely felt that pressure for sure. And I really think it's a positive thing to hold back. And I'll talk more about social media in a little bit, but especially with social media, it's so easy to just oh, I feel this way, type, send it, now the whole world knows. But then the next day after you sleep on it, you're like, wait a second, why did I say that? I wish I didn't say that. I've done that a lot of times. So I'm learning to not focus so much on that instant gratification of, I figured this thing out and I'm sharing it. And now I'm seeing these likes and seeing these comments and people are happy, so cool. But that feeling is so much better and greater when it's something that I've really thought a lot about. Something that I've thought really deeply about, and I'm sharing that conclusion rather than a quick thought that I had that I might change my mind tomorrow. So that's a big thing I've learned, is learning what my truth is and being patient with my thoughts and not trying to work them so hard and get them out right away so that I can share it with other people, but actually just focusing on myself and what do I feel. It doesn't matter what other people might think of it. It doesn't matter that this might be information to share in the future. If I ever want that opportunity to share it, I have to dig through it deeply on my own. And I have to do it without anyone seeing it, without anyone noticing it, it's so easy to just get caught in that trap of I need to share everything I'm doing because if it's not on Instagram, did it really happen? That whole thing. So I've been working on that a lot and getting a lot better with that, if I do say so myself. Number 3, it's always best to trust your gut and your own timing. So going off of that, speaking your truth, if there's something that you want to say to someone or something that you know you need to say to someone eventually, but the timing doesn't feel right or you don't think it's going to go over well if you say it, I've really learned that you have to trust that. And if you don't think it's going to go over well, or if you don't think now is the right time, then you're probably right. And be careful of whether that's fear talking or if it's your gut. I've caught myself in both situations where I felt like it was not the right time to say something and I decided to say it anyway because I told myself I would, and it didn't go over well. And then I've also had it happen where the opportunity came up to speak my truth about something and it was really clear and it presented itself to me, but my fear brain was like, now's not the right time. It's not the right time. And I didn't say anything, and I think I missed an opportunity there. And then I've also had it happen where everything's lined up perfectly, where I felt like I've learned my truth enough and I had a solid opinion on the thing, and the opportunity presented itself and I was ready for it and I spoke my truth at the right time and it went over perfectly and it was received perfectly and I trusted the timing. So that's a really big thing I've learned, is just to trust that feeling. If you have a really nagging feeling inside you that something needs to be done or said, you should probably trust it. You should probably work through those thoughts first to figure out what you actually want and what you actually mean to say. So that way, when the opportunity presents itself, you know exactly what to say and you know exactly how you feel. And then you're not thinking so much about what you think, and you can truly just communicate what you've already figured out and truly listen to the other person and incorporate those ideas into what you've already concluded on your own and see if that shifts anything for you. Number 4, never, ever compare your journey with anyone else. Just don't do it. There's no point. There is 0 point in comparing yourself to anyone else. I think I can just leave it there, but you never know what someone's struggling with. Comparing yourself to others is really just a recipe for some self-hate, or hating others, which is fueled by self-hate. The way that you see other people is a direct reflection of how you see yourself. So once you know and understand that, it really makes no sense to compare yourself to anyone else, because everyone is just living their own individual lives. And because one person is successful does not have any effect on your success or your failures. It really just doesn't. It's all about you. It's all about you and your self-sabotage or your self-motivation, whatever you decide to do. And this brings me into number 5, which is solitude is necessary. It is so necessary. And it's so hard to have true solitude these days because at any moment in time, no matter where you are in the world, you could be connecting with someone on a phone, on the internet. You have an option to be communicating with people at all points of the day if you want. So it really has to be conscious self-discipline to not do that. And it's so necessary for your mental health. Something I love to ask is, how do you act when no one is watching? When nobody is around, what things are you thinking? What ways are you moving? What faces are you making? When you are in pure privacy and you know not one person is going to see what you're doing, how do you act? And what things do you do for enjoyment? When you're not recording yourself to send it to someone, when you are truly alone and you want to have fun, what do you do? That is how you find your passion. That's how you find who you really are. And it's so necessary to do that. We have to. You have to. At some point in your life, you have to. Or else you will be on your deathbed full of regret. We spend all of the time with ourselves. And I think a lot of people know themselves the least. And how do you expect to have any true deep relationships with other people if you don't have that true deep relationship with yourself? And that is a direct lesson from the surgeries that I've had and from the health issues that I've had. I've had no choice but to be in solitude. And that's just another reason for why having health issues and chronic health conditions is such a blessing in disguise. Because I can't say for sure that without the health issues that I would even have spent the amount of alone time necessary to do things like this, to make this video, to teach yoga, to even find yoga. I can't say for sure that I would have found the things that I deeply enjoy and love without having forced solitude. So, be alone. Enjoy it. Number 6. Ooh. Okay. Balancing social media and mental health. This is stuff I've been learning for years, I think, since social media was existed. Actually, all these things I've been learning, but these are just prominent things for this past year. Social media and mental health, man. I think social media is directly responsible for the increase in anxiety and depression, and it's really sad. And I don't know about the future of social media. It's hard to imagine a future without social media, but I have heard opinions that we're going to be looking at social media like we look at cigarettes now. Like there's always going to be some people who do it, but it's going to be like common knowledge that's bad for you. I'm not sure. I really, really don't know. Only time will tell. But I do know that when I spend more time on social media, scrolling on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok, I see how it affects my mood and how it affects my relationships with other people. I am just so much more irritable. I'm so much more snippy and quick to make judgments, and I just don't feel like myself. I don't feel like the best version of myself the more time I spend on social media. It's directly correlated. I've noticed that in past years, but I've never really had an issue stopping because I've had so many other things to do. Like I can just go to a bar, I can go to a restaurant, I can go to work. I mean, most of the time I was just at work and couldn't be on my phone anyway. But not being at work and just being at home and not having any reason to not go on social media, I've really noticed that it requires self-discipline to not be on social media all the time. So here's a few tips and things I do for myself that help me participate in the world and in social media without going completely insane. Obviously, deleting the app is a great thing to do, whether that's over the weekend or maybe past 6 o'clock or something. Just delete the app off your phone. Just don't have it. That's really helpful to do. Another thing, if you have an iPad, I spent a long time where I didn't have Instagram on my phone at all, and I only had it on my iPad. So that way, it wasn't something I could be on if I wasn't home. I treated social media kind of like how computers used to be when we were growing up. You can't be on the computer when you're doing things, when you're doing your life, but then when you come home, you can go and sit on the computer and have like a designated computer time. It wasn't like sprinkled throughout our whole lives. So with Instagram on a thing that stays at home, whether that's an iPad or tablet, that helped so much because I didn't have an option to go on it unless I was home and had time to kill. I couldn't waste time in it while I was in traffic or in line at the grocery store. Like those little moments where we waste them on social media instead of looking at the people around you or observing the store or searching your brain for ideas. Like those moments are so necessary, and we lose so much of them if every time we're bored, we are scrolling on social media. We need to be bored. So make yourself bored. Don't give yourself the option to go on it all the time. And if those things sound a little bit too intense for you, then I have a very simple tip that I think could really help. And it's to change the location of where your app is. So I've realized that my thumb will automatically like swipe and click to exactly where Instagram is without me even thinking about it. That's a little concerning, right? So what I do is I move the app around. So it gives me like a buffer period. It gives me like an extra chance to be like, do you really want to go on social media right now? Do you really want to find where you put the app? Or were you just like doing it because you were bored? It gives you that extra chance to be like, maybe I won't go on it right now, you know? It's a really good tip. So I hope you do that at least. And another tip involving social media is to don't create things for social media. Don't create things with the intention that other people will be looking at them and giving their opinions on them. Just create things. If you are a creator, if you're a poet, if you're an artist in any way, you should have art and things that you make that people don't see. You need to have things that are just for you. So I always find that it improves everything about my life, about my real life and about my social life, if I am just creating things. And then sometimes when I'm bored, I'll look at the things I created and be like, oh, I should share that. I think that would really help people. And then I put it out there. And when I don't do that, when I see someone make a post and I'm like, ooh, that's a good idea. I want to make a post like that. And then I take a picture or type something up that is intended for social media, then it never performs as well. It always makes me regret doing it. And I go through this whole thing of like, oh, why did I do that? Like, oh, I wish I could delete it. And then if I delete it, then will people think it's weird that I deleted it? And then does that make me automatically guilty for like people pleasing if I delete it? Like just all these like unnecessary stressing thoughts that come up. So I have had to learn to stop creating things for social media. Still learning. It's such an easy thing to fall into because I can really convince myself that, no, I'm not creating this for social media. I'm really creating this because I want to create it and I like it. But if I'm honest with myself, I'm like, dude, you just wrote that because you want other people to read it. And I mean, there's definitely a balance because I don't think it's bad to write things for other people to read it. But I do think it's bad to write things with the intention of getting praise back. I just think it really takes away a whole level of deepness to the content that you're making because you're doing it for something. You're not just doing it, you know? I don't know. That's my take on that. I forget what number we're on. Number 7? Number 7? I think 7. It's like a good brain game. I guess I should do this. Okay, number 7. Discomfort is good. Discomfort's a very good thing. Seek discomfort. Discomfort shows you where you have room for growth. And when you feel those feelings of discomfort or like an uncomfortable conversation is going to happen, you can guarantee that you're going to step away from that conversation learning something about yourself, learning something about the other person, just learning something in general. So an example of this is politics. For me, talking about politics and the current state of the world makes me so uncomfortable. Why? Because I don't know shit. I don't know anything about politics. I grew up in a house where the only fights that happened were about politics. So we all just agreed to never talk about politics. And I was fine with that. I mean, I'm still kind of fine with that. Until politics comes up in a conversation. And I do have strong opinions about who I don't like and who I do kind of like, but I don't pay attention enough to have like a solid opinion, like a knowledgeable opinion. So it makes me super uncomfortable when I try to talk about it with someone where I'm like, maybe they know way more than me, and am I going to sound stupid talking about this? And that means that I have so much room for growth there in my knowledge in politics. And that's just one of many examples of that. I'm sure if you think back to conversations that made you uncomfortable and you tried to understand what actually was making you uncomfortable, you would agree with me and you'd say the same thing. And that doesn't mean that you have to do work on that right away, but it just shows you like where there's little bits, like where there's unfinished work inside your head. So if you're a person who wants to grow as a person, who wants to be confident in who they are, wants to be motivated to do good things, to do the work that you're meant to do, then discomfort is your friend. You really want to pay close attention to what makes you uncomfortable because it's a clue, it's a little key to where you have room for improvement. And without fail, after every bad thing that happens or every uncomfortable thing that happens, something good will come from it. Eventually, whether you connect the two or not, and whether you notice it or not, that's what happens. The pendulum has to swing. The pendulum swings this way to something really bad. It has to swing that way to really good. So that's another reason that 2020 can be really good because this was such a bad year. So hopefully the pendulum will swing into the good way in 2021. Ocho. Meditation is key. Plain and simple. But don't let the word meditation turn you off. I think it does for a lot of people. I think there's a fair amount of people that roll their eyes at spiritual things, roll their eyes at meditation, because it is trending now, and I get it. So you don't have to call it meditation. You really don't. You can call it whatever you want. You can call it prayer if that's better for you, What I mean is having a deep relationship with yourself is key. And that goes along with solitude is key, What you do in your alone time really matters. And I wrote something really good about this, and I'm going to read it so I don't forget any words. How do you know what you want unless you're not in the potential influence of others? We can be influenced so easily without knowing or admitting it. We convince ourselves something was our idea when it really was a planted idea. I see this play out so much in politics. People repeating what the talk radio said in the morning and saying that that's their idea and that's their opinion, but it's not. It's the repeated opinion. And it's so much more dangerous when people think it's their opinion, because then they'll fight like it's them. And when that opinion is attacked, they'll feel like they're attacked. Alone time is often spent ingesting information. And when I say alone time, I really mean like meditation time and time when no information is being put into your brain. You're sorting through the information that's already in there, because there's so much information in our brains. You might listen to 5 talk radio shows. You might think all of those opinions are your opinions, but then if you have some alone time to think about what those people actually said, you'll be able to cherry pick the things that you actually believe and the things you agree with and the things you want to learn more about and the things you think you might agree with, but you're not 100%. We really have to have this pure alone time where we're not ingesting information. No phones, please. Just meditate. A lot of people think meditation means stopping all of your thoughts. That's not what it means. It means watching all of your thoughts, actually listening to them. Or a lot of people will say that their mind is too talkative in order to meditate, and they could never sit still, or they could never get their mind to stop talking to meditate. That's why you should meditate, because, listen to me. You think my mind isn't going off all the time? If this is how much I'm talking, think about how much I'm talking inside my brain. It's so much. It's all the time. So when I meditate, there's a lot of different analogies for this, but you treat your thoughts like cars on a highway. I really like that one. Where you're watching the cars go by, you notice the shape and the color of each thought, of each car, but you don't jump on a car and ride with it and go where it goes. You just let it come and watch it go. And say something comes that you're like, oh my God, I really do have to think about that. Just make note of it and go back to it later once you've cleared your mind a little bit, It's like cleaning out your desktop. You really have to do it. And you can lose so many great ideas if you don't do it. You could have a great idea in the shower, and then if you get out of the shower and you're immediately ingesting information again on your phone, you're going to forget about it. You're going to forget to write it down. You're going to forget to sort through it again. So meditation really just means getting to know yourself, getting to know what your brain says, getting to know how your body feels. And you'll realize that they're very connected. And if there's an area of tension in the body, it's usually linked to a repeating thought or a painful thought that's going unnoticed. And not always, but sometimes it is. And sometimes the thought can go away when that area of tension goes away. So just by stretching into your hips, maybe you realize you're not as upset about that thing. Things like that. That should be a whole separate video because I could go on for forever. I'm just going to move on for now. Number 9. This one is tricky for me. We should focus on doing good instead of feeling good. And this is really hard for me because I've always made it a point to feel good. I'm sure you've heard me in other videos. Focus on feeling good. Feeling good should be your first priority. And I do believe that. I do believe that if you don't feel good, maybe not if you don't feel good, but if you feel bad and you're ignoring it and not doing something about it, that has to be addressed. I still believe that. But I do see the point here. And the point is that we can get so caught up in feeling good. This is how a lot of addictions start, or you think that you can't possibly do something unless you're feeling good. So you kind of just stay home and you miss opportunities. And I get caught in this. I learned this literally last night. So this is really just making its way into me, and I'll probably go deeper into this in the future. But be mindful of chasing feeling good and try to focus on service instead. So it's okay if you're not feeling 100%. You can still try to focus on making other people feel good. And then in turn, that will make you feel good. So there's a balance there, And I think trusting your gut is going to be key there too, because sometimes it really is necessary for you to focus on yourself and making yourself feel good. And other times we can do it too much and we get really involved in ourselves. Raising my hand here, this is me. And we forget about the things that actually make us feel good, which is service, which is helping other people, which is sharing our ideas that might help other people, which is what I'm doing right now. And this makes me feel good, genuinely. This makes me feel so good. I love talking about real shit like this. And I'm so proud of myself for finally doing this because This literally has been something I've wanted to do since I was a kid. So it's just about damn time. So yeah, I'll talk a lot more about that stuff in the future once I figure it out more. Last one, number 10, shadow work. A lot of people in the spiritual community refer to the stuff I was talking about, like your internal shit, as shadow work. And I don't think that that's necessarily the best term to use. It just has like a darker connotation with it. We don't have to call it that. I think we can just call it work. We have to do our inner work. It doesn't have to be shadow work and light work. And this brings me into spiritual bypassing that a lot of people do, which is, oh, everything's love and light. Don't worry. We're all connected. Everything's good. It's always good. We're always gotten. Everything's going to be okay in the end. All of these things, as true as they may be, it's not helpful to say that and to ignore problems by using that. That's how you get really like vapid and shallow people, spiritual people, where it's like, oh, I just can't deal with their negativity. It's just too much for me. I just can't. Like that type of stuff. We need bad. We need bad things inside of us. We need bad things outside of us. I don't think anyone's goal should be to totally get rid of their negativity and totally get rid of their toxins and only have love and light inside them. I mean, maybe some people like monks and can do that and stuff, or if you feel really called to do that, then go ahead. But I've been trying to do that for years at this point, meditating and praying, like everything bad exit my body, everything good come into my body. And I still do that work. In a lot of my yoga classes, I'll say like, breathe in good, exhale bad. I do believe that a cleansing, a mental cleansing like that is beneficial, but we have to acknowledge the bad and we have to accept that there will be bad inside of us and outside of us. And bad gives us depth. So again, if we think about like the vapid spiritual people, it's very surface level because everything is light. There's no contrast there at all. And if you want real depth as a person and in your thoughts and in your community and in your world, then you need the bad too. It's the yin and yang sign. We need the good, we need the bad, we need the bad within the good, and we need the good within the bad. And I think this really is a key for life, is to genuinely understand that and to accept that bad things are going to happen. And it's not going to be the end of the world. In fact, it's very necessary for bad things to happen. And I mean, I think that concludes 2020 for me. This was a bad year. It really was. Everything on paper was bad. Bad things happened this year. But good things are going to happen because of this year. And that's the truth. We need the bad for the good. We need the bad to even understand what good is. You know? So, those were the main things I've learned this past year. I'm going to revisit a lot of these topics, and I'll probably do specific videos on some of these lessons I've learned. But if there's anything that really sparked your interest that you want to hear me talk more about, then just let me know in the comments, and I'll be sure to hit upon it in a future video. I would love to hear what you guys learned from 2020. I know we've all had such crazy experiences and different experiences. I really would love like some community type of thing going on in the comments where we just share real things that we may be scared to tell people. Clearly, I really want this to be a space where anything can be said and nothing's off limits. So if you feel called to, open up your heart. I would absolutely love to see it. If you think of anyone who may benefit from watching this video or any of my videos, make sure you send it along to them. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe. I hope you have a wonderful new year, and I'll see you in the next video.